Hey everyone, I'm Jim DeLorenzo, and welcome to Storytelling with a Purpose. I've spent the last 25 years helping people shape and share their stories, from entrepreneurs and executives to athletes and nonprofit leaders. This season, I'm focusing on something that's at the heart of everything I do, media training, but not just the kind that preps you for a tough interview or a TV appearance. I'm talking about media training as a tool for clarity, confidence, and connection. In today's episode, I have a very special guest, my friend Vince Quinn, the creative director at SBX Productions, and we're going to talk about the best ways to be prepared, media training-wise, to be a guest or a host on a podcast. Everybody thinks they can just get on there and do their thing, and it's gonna draw people in, and they don't have to do any promotion, or they don't have to do any hard work. They just got to sit down and talk, like you and I are doing right now. But there's more to it than that, as we both know.
Yeah, there's a whole lot to it. So glad we're talking about this. I think it's a really important thing, just from the idea of there's so many business owners with podcasts and trying to get the most out of the podcasting space. It's growing every year, so there's more shows all the time. There's more money being made all the time, like advertising, which is, I mean, kind of a different lane, but all the same. The industry's growing.
Right.
So everybody wants to be a part of it, but I think they ultimately have a bad blueprint. So it's good to talk about like actual things that work on a practical and especially on a small business level.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I've been trying to share with my clients, one particular client that I was working with, Veronica Ferrante at Ideal Stays, is a woman entrepreneur, a minority entrepreneur, family-owned business, dealing with the Airbnb space, the Verbo space. She is booking properties in the Poconos and in the main line at Philadelphia. And she has a definite fear of being interviewed on podcasts, a definite fear of being interviewed by anyone. So one of the things that I worked with her on to try to accommodate her and acclimate her is doing mock interviews with her, so that we could prepare, what sounded good, what didn't sound good, what could she learn from. And that's one of the things I like to guide my clients towards before they even start thinking about being a guest on a podcast. But do you think that is a real proper way or a good way to get people started?
I think it's a great way to get people started. Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing. Like when I'm starting with somebody who wants to launch a show, right? The number one thing that we do, this is literally the first thing we do, is we plan a pilot.
Okay.
So like television, right? Hey, here's a pilot. The network likes it. They don't. They pick it up. They don't. And you do the same thing with your own show. So do one. Don't tell anybody about it. Just do it behind the scenes, practice, see if you like it. If it's actually conveying the messages that you want, it's getting the impact you think it could get, and evaluate that. And if it doesn't, go back to the drawing board and go do a couple of takes. So there's a lot to be said for that, because repetition builds confidence, right? You get more experience. You get to see it in different ways, understand the medium a little bit more and how you fit into it. So as much as you can practice that and do that before you go on shows, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's only going to make you better, and it's going to improve your business as well.
Absolutely. Now, when I'm talking to my clients and I'm trying to coach them on how to be their best presentation of themselves and their business, do you think it's more important at the start to be a good guest on a podcast before you even consider being a host on a podcast?
That's an interesting question. I think it's very much situational about the time and resources and commitment that you have, right? Okay. I think the beautiful thing about being a guest is it's pretty low commitment. Right. I mean, you can really pick it up and drop it whenever you want. So, hey, you got a lot of time. You want to guest on a bunch of different shows? Great. Let's go try and book as many shows as we can and book those interviews to be in the next couple of weeks. And we'll pile all these things on. And then we know busy season's coming up, right? Like just arbitrarily speaking, if you're an accountant, right? Once you get to the start of the new year, you basically don't exist, because you're just going to be doing taxes like crazy until April. Right. So that you know that. But you can plan around it. And if it turns out you can't guess for those 3-4 months, so be it. Like, not a big deal. You're not committed to it, right? So for some people, that is a good way to start, and then they get acclimated. Or if they're just uncertain about whether or not they like doing podcasting and all of that, then yeah, guest on some shows, get a feel for it, see if you like it, be in it. And then if you decide, you know what, I actually like this and I want to do it all the time and I want to control it, then go and make that leap. But that's where guesting is really valuable to start. And then on the other side, if it's really just, and this is how how I do it with a lot of people I work with, and how I do it for my own show that I run with my business partner is we just want social media awareness.
Right.
That's the number one goal.
We want people to know you're out there. I compare social media to a "We're open" sign. When my father had his camera shop in downtown Trenton for 50 years, he walked in the morning and he slid the sign to "Open." This is in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So you slide the thing over, it says "I'm open," and you turn the lights on, and you have your business. And at the end of the day, you close the door and you move the sign over to close. With social media, we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week open or closed sign. And as long as we want to be open, we keep posting things out there to make people know, hey, we're here. We want to do business with you.
Yeah.
And I think the podcasting part of that is a very important social media content, for want of a better term.
For sure. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because for us, it was, okay, we want to start a podcast for our business because we want to post as many clips as we possibly can. We have a newsletter. We want to fuel that with content. Podcast is a good way to do all of that, taking the transcripts and converting it, for example. So that was our number one play. So we did that, It started at first with me guesting because I was on other shows. We were running the business. We were busy. And so we had to start prioritizing our time and building out that strategy to launch the show. And eventually we got there. And now that we did it, we have the whole plan in mind and we know exactly how we fit into the space because we've kind of researched the market being guests on other shows.
Right.
So there's a lot of flexibility with that. So yeah, there's different ways to approach guesting or podcasting. There's not necessarily a correct answer, like in that innate sense.
Sure.
But that's the beauty of it, is it's a very flexible medium, and it's just how do you bend it to really suit you and what you need.
When I'm talking to clients and I'm doing my media training and I'm showing them how to be a guest, how to be a host, how to talk on camera, how to not talk on a microphone. One of the things and I've mentioned this in a previous episode, is finding a media person that you can emulate. In my case, I've mentioned Johnny Carson was my original icon, and then I've added other people along the way. But it's really important, I think, for people to identify people that they see on TV or they hear in a podcast or they've watched on YouTube or they follow their social media, to be someone that, okay, I'd like to be like that person, because that helps you shape your personality the way you want it to be. Do you find that to be often the case as well?
Yeah, I think role models are great, right? It's the idea of why, and it's a way to self-analyze too, which I think is one of the best parts about podcasting, is everything that you're putting out is also a chance to reflect on yourself. Who are you? What are you about? What are the things that you have opinions on, and why do you have those opinions? What is your business about? Who do you really serve? You know what I mean? Like, you reflect on all of this stuff, but there is an aspect of entertainment and education, and who are these people that you like, and what about them makes you so connected to them? What do you admire about them? And to be able to understand that, I think you get a better sense of who you are and what you're about. So for me, Conan O'Brien, actually, another late night guy, that's my guy. And it's for a lot of different reasons. I mean, it started because when I was a kid, he was just incredibly funny and entertaining. Yeah. But as he's evolved and I've gotten older, I've seen him now with his own podcast, and he's just one of the best interviewers out there. He has so much flexibility where he can read the room, see his guest, understand what they provide and what they're good at, what their value is for that show. And if it's comedy people, a lot of times he can go into the nuances of writing comedy and performing it and their experiences of building their careers. And then other people, it's pretty surface level and silly and goofy. But he knows that's the best approach, and he can be flexible in his style. So to be sharp, engaging, funny, informational, to be able to read his guests and get a great version of a conversation with them every time. And it's not the same kind of interview every time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because he spent all those years in late night with people, all these different people on the couch. Some he knows, some he doesn't, some he likes, some he doesn't, some are making good stuff, some aren't. Right. You know what I mean? So to have that flexibility to be able to read these people and say, okay, here's how I'm going to approach this interview going forward. He had tens of thousands of reps. Yep. So how do you not look at somebody like that and go, they've got all of this experience, and how can I emulate that? And I just think he's the truth.
And I think the other part of that is important when we're discussing how to be a guest, how to be a host, comfortable in your own skin. You see a guy like Conan O'Brien, when he first started out being on camera, he was very uncomfortable because it was a first time out. But he's grown into it. He's comfortable in his own skin. He knows how to do things now. And I think that that's something that you only get the opportunity to do by repetition. So if you're planning to do a lot of podcast guesting, or if you're planning to host your own podcast, you really have to get the reps in first before you can, spring full bore into being a guest on all these different podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you have to find your voice.
Yeah.
It's really that simple, and that's the same for any comedian, any musician. You know what I mean? Like you're
and any business owner.
Any business owner. It's just what makes a lot of people do the same kind of work that you do. Right? So what is it about you that makes you different, and what is authentic for you to do? And to be able to express that to people, that's the art, right? It's everybody does this thing, like, hey, I'm in real estate and there's all these other real estate agents out there, but I do this. Like, I'm very big on customer service and I do that exceptionally well, or I know every neighborhood in the city better than anybody else, or whatever it might be. Like, but finding that and being able to express it in a way that's easy for people to understand is the gift. But that takes time.
Right.
And so that's where the repetition absolutely comes in. And that's one of the best things about being a guest on a podcast is there's a million shows out there, man. Right. I mean, like, quite literally, there are about 200,000 shows that post in a given week right now.
Holy cow.
200,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So think about how many of those are relevant to your field and take guests. Like, there's a lot of them out there. So there's so many opportunities. You could be on a show pretty much every single day if you wanted to, if you put in enough work. So there's a lot of opportunities to get those reps and get a lot better.
And let's talk about that for a minute, because in talking to clients who are interested in doing a podcast, or interested in being a guest, or interested in telling their story to more than just their immediate audience, one of the things that I find is very important is finding the right podcasts, finding the right audience. So everybody can say, "Oh, I listen to Joe Rogan. I really like Joe Rogan." Yeah, everybody listens to Joe Rogan apparently. So what's your chance of ever if you're an accountant and you've got your practice to talk about and you have some ideas about accounting, you're not going to get on Joe Rogan, okay? But what is there within the professional sphere where you can be a guest on a podcast to talk about your accounting practice, or talk about your ideas as how accounting, your services, you in particular, can be of help?
Yeah.
So then you have to find, okay, let me find the podcasts that I listen to that I like, and which ones of those are the ones that maybe if I work hard at it, I could be a guest. And that's the next part, is the working hard at it, because a lot of people just think, okay, I'm going to pitch myself to this podcast and I'm just going to get on and I'm going to talk like you and I are doing now. But you and I have known each other now for 4 or 5 years. We've done a few of these things.
Yeah.
So we have that comfort level. But, Jim DeBella is not going to know the host of the accounting podcast or the CPA podcast or the ARS podcast as well as you and I know each other. So how do you recommend people research and learn about the audience? Because that's something that I try to do for them, but we're not all working with a professional.
Yeah, so part of it is just searching for things, right? On the basic level, if you don't want to commit any money whatsoever, like go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, just search for shows. Go to LinkedIn if it's a business standpoint. Search podcasts that are in the certain kinds of topics that you want to talk about. See what's out there. That's one way to do it. The more official way to do it is there's different sites that are about matchmaking. So you can get a profile on there. They will suggest shows that you could be on based on some different tags that you choose, and the shows also might have those same tags. Try to make some introductions that way. And then otherwise it's, playing the game a little bit and just reading the market and looking for opportunities. Because one of the things that I've done, and I've really worked hard on this, and I think it's important, is when I guest on shows, I follow up with those hosts, and on LinkedIn particularly, I send a connection request.
There you go.
And I follow the show. I'll follow the person, I'll follow the show. So I do that. And the cool thing is that I see people who are then guests on those shows, and they're promoting being on that show. And you know what I mean? So now it's like it expands my network because I have all these shows and hosts that I have familiarity with. They know me. I have more things to engage with, and I'm also getting access to other people in the podcast space that are engaging with that network of that show, that person. So it just gives me more opportunities to learn what's out there. But on the simplest level, finding one of those matching platforms, podcast guest matching platforms, and just searching for shows in your niche. And that's the easiest way to do it. And I'll say there's really two ways to play this as well, right? Because one is the talking about your actual services to the kinds of people who directly need it and really getting into that, right? Like more direct and salesy and educational.
Sure.
So there are shows about that. They're probably a little more niche. So you're going to have to be looking for that. So if you are accounting, you might be, do you work with solopreneurs? Do you work with a certain industry? Like you only work with law firms? You know what I mean? Then you'll want to look for podcasts for law firms and try to get on those shows. That's what you want to do. But the other side is if you're also talking about like this business influencer element and you want to get booked on stages and really build your status and all of that, then other stuff is going to be potentially your backstory, right? It's like, what was this thing that made you so great, and how is that a lesson for other people that they can take something away? And there's a lot of shows that are just generally about entrepreneurial stories, right? Or stories in general. What is your background? Where did you come from? Why did you make these decisions? What were big moments in your life? And you get opportunity there.
Yeah,
so,
and that's a big part of what I try to share with my clients who approach me about, hey, I really want to be on a podcast, or I really want to be on TV. I really want to be booked on this show. And it's, okay, great. What are you going to talk about? What is your message? So even before we get to the point of, okay, we've identified the fact that you want to be on TV, or you want to be on a podcast, or you want to be interviewed. Okay, what do you want to talk about? Because that's the next step. What is your message? Why would I can tell everybody in the world, hey, Vince Quinn's a great guy. You ought to have him on your show. Why? Because I said he's a great guy. No, it doesn't work that way. It's like, okay. I just booked a few people for interviews this week with local radio in Philly and local TV in Philly. And for some of them, it's like, I don't have to work hard. I just tell them who I'm pitching them, and they know who that person is right away because they've seen that person everywhere. I'll use as an example, William Shatner. I booked William Shatner.
Wait, who?
William, yeah, no. Exactly, yeah. Well, if you don't know William Shatner, then you're probably not going to care about it anyway.
Yeah.
But I booked him on 2 shows in Philadelphia last week, and I didn't have to do anything more than say, I've got William Shatner. Do you want him?
Yeah.
No. On the other hand, if I tell them, hey, I've got Vince Quinn, they're going to say, who the hell's Vince Quinn? Well, okay, here's what his story is. So I have to know their story to pitch them to the host or the producer or the booking agent. So having that message down, having that story down, that's the big first step before you can even think about going on a podcast. I believe.
Yeah, you have to have something to sell, right? In terms of what is your informational value, what educational value, what is that entertainment? Like you need to have some reason for people to bring you on. And the clearer you can present that to people, the easier it is for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the big problems is, and I get pitches all the time, and people literally say things like, hey, I think your show's great. You should have me as a guest. Here's my profile. Go find out. It's like,
do more digging.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to dig. I've got things to do.
Yeah.
So if we can create, for our clients, for our people that we're working with, if we can create a profile of them that, we've really worked at it. We've really honed it down to, and we've got an elevator pitch. We've got a 30-second pitch. We've got a 15-second pitch. We have something that we can get them to pay attention to very quickly, because time is money in these things. We can't give them a half-hour explanation of who this person is and why you need to be on my show.
Okay, and that's a great one too. Yeah, when you're presenting people with a full book of information when it comes to podcasts, like you give me your whole background and life story, I'm not interested, and I will, out of instinct, I will skip it.
Yeah.
Because I don't care. Like on some level, it's get to the point. What is this about? How can you help people? Why is it a fit for my show? And that's all I want to know.
It's interesting you say that, because I know that you had written something earlier this year about nobody cares about your backstory.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about your guest's backstory. You don't have to do too much of an intro, as long as you can say, Vince Quinn is the co-founder and creative director at SBX Productions, one of the leading podcasting and content creation companies in the Philadelphia market.
Yeah.
That's enough to start with. You don't need, 5,000 watt radio station in Fresno, California. That's the old Ted Baxter, Mary Tyler Moore intro. I'm showing my age.
But you're right. Because the whole thing with it, and the whole reason I say this is because there are some avenues, like I said earlier, where giving your backstory is the show.
Yes.
Like that's what the show is, and that's fine. But on other shows, what are you bringing to the table for people? And that's what it's all about. They want information. People, your audience, the public in general, humans in general. We're selfish on some level, right? It is about us. What are we entertained? Are we learning something? How is this helping us? Do we like it or not? So you have to give that to people. And when nobody knows who you were prior to being on the show, why would they want your backstory?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and that's how they open up these shows. They're like, hey, let's tell you 15 minutes about a person you didn't know existed prior to 10 seconds ago. And it just doesn't
and I'm going to hold your interest for the intro, and then you're going to want to listen to them for another 15 minutes.
Yeah,
right.
It's brutal, and it hurts you because the whole thing is you're out there to sell something, right? You're trying to grow your brand and sell people on who you are. You're trying to sell your business and the services that you have or the products that you create, like whatever it is, but you are selling. So you want to be able to talk about your area of expertise and your specific things that you solve or the specific problems that you're looking to present and discuss. You want to get to that stuff. So talking about your background isn't really doing too much for you.
Yeah.
Right? So there's value in it occasionally, but you want to have it in your back pocket. You want to have a good story when people ask you.
Right.
But ultimately, you want to talk about, what are these defined things that I sell, and how do I talk about it in the most compelling way possible?
When you look at TV, especially TV cable news, you look at a channel like CNN. I primarily recommend people look at things on CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, because those are the people who you may not know who they are or what they're doing. So when they're getting interviewed, they're giving them a very quick introduction, and they're going right to the topic. And I think that does a great way to present yourself, to just be able to just, here I am, let's talk about this. So I'm going to ask you right now, as someone who has been a guest and as someone who's been a host, okay, what are the things you like to do to prepare for a podcast as a guest? Yeah. What do you tell people this is what they should do when they're going to be a guest on a podcast?
Yeah, so it's continuously refine your own message and make sure that everything the other host is going to see about you is really setting you up in the best way.
Okay.
And in some cases, when it comes to these profiles, like if you're on a matching site, for example, then they have questions that you can pre-write and have them available when someone checks out your profile. It's there. So that's great. When you're pitching yourself, if you're doing emails and things, you might want to send with that, hey, here's a sheet with some common questions that I regularly answer, I'm very comfortable to talk about, or here's some topics that I'm an expert in and would love to go through. So that way, as you're communicating with these people, you know that you are being set up to dominate the conversation the way that you want to.
Right.
And that's the number one goal, right? So you know that you're pitching this because those are the things that you want to talk about. You see that there's value to that person's audience. They see that as well, so they're having you on. So how are you setting them up to do that? And I'm making sure that I have good answers prepared, right? So on some degree, like you think of anybody that's promoting a TV show or a movie or anything like that, they're on the press circuit. And at some point, after all those phone calls and sit-down interviews and all those other things, and they've probably said the same story like 50 times.
Right.
But you know what? That's the story that sells, and that's what they're going to say to all of these places.
That's why all these people are coming to talk to them.
Yes. So you want to have those things prepared, and that's what it is. For example, with me, one of the questions, because I sell, as I'm pushing myself as a guest, I'm saying, hey, I talk about hosting skills.
Yes.
So if you want to be a great host, or your audience wants to learn about how to be a great host, let's talk about the art of hosting a show. And with that, I'll have things like what moves a topic from good to great.
Okay.
And it's specificity. And I can go on for 5 minutes as to why. but I know what that question is. I know my very specific answer to that question. So it's not just giving the host questions to ask you, but it's also what is my answer to this question and having a good idea of that. And then it's also, the more you guessed, listening back from time to time and taking account of what you said. Because the fun thing is that you don't control the conversation ultimately, right? It is somebody else's show. They are the host. You're to some degree subject to their questions. So, okay, well, when you're in that moment, it forces you to improvise a little bit.
Yes.
And so you might say something that you hadn't prepared before or thought about, but now that you said it, you're like, oh, that's a great talking point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so being able to take that stuff and constantly harvest it to refine what your message is, like those are the things. So I would say it's basically well done preparation, big time. And then beyond that, it's reviewing the tape. It's really
the post-mortem.
Yeah.
I know it's a lousy word, post-mortem, but a lot of people don't do that. They don't listen back to what they've done. I know that I sometimes fall into that trap, but you really want to hear how you did, and we all hate our own voice. We all hate the way we look. It's something you got to suck it up and get on with it. But listening to yourself and understanding how it went and getting kind of a picture of, okay, I really liked it when I did that there. I'm going to try to do that more often. Or, geez, I really shouldn't do that. I put my hand in front of my face like this and I was trying to answer a question and that really didn't look good on camera or anything like that.
Yeah. No, that kind of stuff matters. I mean, I've had times too where I didn't really have a good answer to a question. It was okay. It wasn't incredibly thought out, right? And then I went back and I listened to it and I was like, okay, well, how do I answer that better next time?
And I think one of the keys to that I like to work with is having that person hear the question and pause for a moment. Don't answer immediately and say, wow, that's a good question. Let me refer back to something that I experienced in the past that relates to that. And you might be able to kind of bridge the question to the answer that you feel comfortable giving.
Yeah.
And then work your way around it. Yeah, but I think that's a very important thing is being able to control the flow by controlling the dialogue, controlling your answer. Ultimately, you control your answer. So if you take a moment to think about it, that's not as bad as saying, I really don't know how to answer that, and just being a total doofus on air.
Well, yeah,
and we've seen people do that. People do that all the time. Unfortunately, there's lesser and lesser of those on the mainstream channels and shows. But
and they edit that stuff out a lot too. But yeah, it's definitely something that happens, and you have to be aware of that, right? Yeah. Part of it is you have to have some level of thick skin, or you will get thick skin from doing this because it is public, yes, and you are working on your message all the time, and these are conversations, so it's not a scripted one-way thing and all these different takes. You can do as many as you want. Like it is open, it's public, so you have to embrace that. But it does make you so much better, and it just creates so much opportunity that you're crazy to say no.
Yeah. And again, you can repurpose it to your own uses. You can use clips on your social media. You can use it on your website. You can use it on your LinkedIn. All these things you can do with a little work to continue to use an interview that you might have done like a year ago.
Yeah.
And repurpose it for, okay, earlier I discussed this with so-and-so.
Yep.
But let me get to the heart of one thing, and then we're going to move on to hosting.
Sure.
Okay. What's one thing that people listening to the show or watching the show today can do to be a good guest on a podcast?
Okay. It's, first off, be engaged in the conversation.
Yep.
If you don't really have interest in being on the show, don't go. Don't do it. Because it's not going to help you, right?
You don't want it to be a chore. You don't want it to be, geez, I really don't want to do this, but my PR guy told me to do it.
Yeah, and to go into it with enthusiasm, to be engaged, to be prepared, like to actually show up for the moment It's going to make you look good. It's going to make the host look good, right? Because they brought you to their audience, and now you're showing them that, hey, yeah, this person, I know my stuff, and I am very helpful and informative. That's good for the host. That's good for the audience. That means you can build a relationship with that host more likely than not beyond the show. Stay in touch with them. Create your, expand your network. So, yeah, go into these things with the idea that you're building relationships. And so you want to have energy, you want to have enthusiasm. And if you're not getting that, then either slow it down, change the shows that you're on, like make some sort of change. But go into it open and willing to truly engage in the process.
Absolutely. I think that's a great tip for people, because they see people on podcasts and they think, oh, I can do that. And then when it gets right down to it, they don't really want to do that. So why are we doing it?
It's a waste.
So having that engagement, having that interest, having that connection with the host, whether you're doing it via video remote or you're doing it in person or in studio, you have to make that connection, and you have to be making eye contact with the host, whether it's even through the camera. I see a lot of people both on TV and on podcasts who seem to be doing it from the sauna. I mean, the camera isn't clear. The picture isn't clear. They're looking down, and the camera is getting a shot of their bald spot or something else, like I just did. But you want to be able to be attentive and be making eye contact, and be making eye contact with the audience as well. You don't want to be just some person in a chair.
Yeah.
I often use the example too of being prepared for an interview by making sure that you're in the right place at the right time and you have no distractions. You turn your cell phone off. You turn off your email ding so it doesn't ding.
Yes.
All these different things that people overlook. I mean, I'm even hearing it. I heard it on a Major League Baseball broadcast last night where somebody's email was pinging during the play-by-play.
God.
And it's like, wait a minute, what are you paying attention to?
It's awful. That is huge. That is one of those things I've seen so many times. I've seen that from guests. I've seen that from hosts. People getting on their phone and sending a text or replying to an email or just mindlessly scrolling because everybody's so addicted to their phones. You know what I mean? It's just like, be in the show.
In the moment. Be in the moment. Be engaged. If you're not engaged, if you're looking down at your cell phone, you're not engaged.
And it's a waste of time. This is marketing, right? Like, this is brand building. This is getting engagement and things. Like, to not commit to that is insane.
And if you're doing a Zoom call on your laptop, close all the other programs. Just keep Zoom open and be focused on that. Don't be saying, all right, I'm going to go check my email while he's asking me this question. That's bull.
It is.
It's really distracting, and people see that. And if you see that as an observer, why would you want to have anything to do with the person that's doing that?
Yeah, 100%. So put your phones away. Lock in. Yeah.
And that goes for public speaking. That goes for interviews. That goes for being on camera. That goes for being on a microphone. Any engagement like that. If you were having your photo taken by a professional photographer and your phone rings and you say, I've got to take this call. Well, then why are you spending an hour with a professional photographer? You should have that blocked off. You should be doing the thing that you need to do.
Yeah.
So any type of engagement like that, keeping contact. Now, on the opposite side of the table, as the host, what are some of the things that you do to prepare to be a host of a podcast?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things, I mean, first off, it's obviously preparing the concept of the show, right? I think that's number one. Is like, I've got all these ideas of exactly why I'm doing the show, what I want to get out of it, the kinds of guests that I want to bring on, the kinds of topics I'll talk about by myself, how I want to balance that, like how many episodes are just me versus having a guest, like all of those things. So that's kind of like the preamble, right?
Okay.
The foundation of it. But then when it comes to I'm getting ready to do an episode, number one thing I encourage people to do is be selfish. Because think about it. You have a person in front of you, and this is your show. The difference between every other show and yours is this one's yours.
Right.
So
Right.
who are you and what is your perspective and how you bring that to that conversation? So when you have somebody that comes on, what is curious about that person to you? What are you interested in?
Why did you bring them in?
Yeah. What are the ideas that they have? Why do you think that's valuable? Why do you want to talk about it? And what are questions that you have for them? Like where do you want to go conversationally? So think about that, because now you're going to have a better conversation. Odds are they haven't had this exact conversation with somebody else.
Sure.
Right? You are clearly impassioned in what you're talking about, so your engagement is there, which odds are is going to get more of a reaction out of them. You're curious about who they are and what they're doing and asking good questions, which is going to get them that additional energy, and your audience will be able to feel that because it's just a better show. You know, it's authentic. There's real energy and thought behind it, and that's what people are looking for. So give that to them.
Yeah.
But that's the number one thing, is just prepare and say, yeah, I've got this coming up. I got to ask them about this. I got to ask them about this. I saw this on their social feed. What is that about? You know what I mean? But like it just makes it so much easier and better when you treat a show that way.
Yeah, and I think I like to approach it as a conversation. I like to approach it and I'll do research and I'll do scripting and I'll do things like that to prepare. But when we get right down to it, I have the intro written down and I have the exit written down, and I have some other questions that I have highlighted and things that I thought, okay, maybe we'll talk about that. But I don't actually look at that.
Yeah.
I'm doing that in my head after that. I've got the ideas that I want to talk about because I'm interested in you. This whole episode evolved out of a conversation we were having 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about what do you want your second season to be, how do you want to go, and then I started asking you questions informally about what makes a good guest. Do people who want to be a guest on a podcast, should they consider media training before they go on it? And again, that's what I'm talking about all year on this show, is media training and why it's important for you. No matter who you are, you probably should have some media training. So if you're going to be on a podcast, what better way to be ready to be on a podcast than to have someone professionally coach you and train you on how to do an interview, how to get your story straight, and how to do it right. And that was a conversation you and I were just having here casually 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, we need to do a show about this. We need to do an episode about this. This is a show.
Yeah.
And I think that people often go into the process either as a host or as a guest just because it's there. For sure. And they don't really give a lot of thought. I wrote down something that you did say to me. What is what is podcasting, and what is your strategy for podcasting? Those are things that a lot of people don't think about at all. No. They just hear a podcast and say, boy, I'd like to be on that. Or they see somebody else that's on a podcast and I should be there.
Yeah. And everybody has a podcast, I should have one.
Right.
But there's just no thought behind it. And it doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't get any listeners, and they can't say they got any positive results out of it because they have no plan for anything.
Right.
And a lot of what I do, which is interesting because people, a lot of times when they think about results of a podcast, it's listeners. I'm getting a massive amount of downloads from my show. And as a business owner, it's not what's going to drive your success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, what does your business need, right? You need leads. You want sales. So how are you using the show in a way that is leveraging you to get more sales than you were previously getting?
Right.
And that's the goal.
How are you getting in the door? How are you getting a lead? How are people seeing you and saying, boy, I really want to do business with that person, or I really want to know that person better. How can I work with this person?
Yeah.
What can this person do for me?
And at the same time, if you're having a conversation with somebody that's in your network and they have that problem,
right.
You go, oh, well, I see this guy on LinkedIn all the time and he's posting about all this stuff and I know him, and yeah, you should absolutely talk to that guy. Let me go help you out, because you've demonstrated your value so much, so consistently by creating this show and creating all this content and all these posts that people know without a doubt, whether they're in the market for you or not, they've just seen you deliver so many times,
right.
that they just trust you. And to get that kind of trust from people that aren't your client,
that's key.
Is pretty amazing. And that's what this can give you. So like that's success, but you have to do it with the idea that you're building for it and preparing for it. Like everybody starts these shows with the idea of I'm just going to be famous and I need like the number of listeners that I get defines the show. And if I don't have sponsors, it's not a success. And it's just completely the wrong way to think about it 9 times out of 10.
Right. Because if you're really successful with a show, you're getting people to listen to you, but you're also getting people to call you or reach out to you
100%.
or want to meet you. I mean, I look at this from my business, from my public relations practice as a networking tool. You know, I don't do I don't do any advertising. I've done one ad in my 26 years of business. I got one client out of it. It paid for the ad.
Story for another day. Well,
exactly.
Yeah, we'll
exactly.
get into that. Yeah.
But with a podcast or my social media, I'm letting people know, again, it goes back to my father in the camera shop. I'm open for business. Come on in. I'm here. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And those are the ways, you know, if you're going to really do something in the podcast space, that's the kind of interaction you want. Not just, hey, somebody downloaded it. Did they actually listen to it? Did they do anything with it after they downloaded it? Did they say, hey, you should go talk to this guy? He really knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Did it give you any value at all?
Right.
And a lot of times it doesn't. I've seen so many shows out there that are just mindlessly floating around with no plan and no goal and no specific lane. And it's frankly, it's a waste of time. And I feel bad for them because it's not always their fault. They just don't know any better. So if you're going to go and host a show, and especially as a business owner doing that, like think of the opportunity that you have here. You get to talk about what you do and the problems you solve and what makes you unique and the opinions that you have and things that only you can do for these people, right? Like as you're helping them, it's, hey, I'm going to help you do this thing, and here's all the reasons why I do it and why I'm capable of getting this done. And here's experiences that I've had where I've done it for other people.
Sure.
Like, it's all the proof of concept that you need, and it is living online all the time, like you mentioned earlier. Like people can go back. You can incorporate these things into your intake process and go, hey, so you're interested in here, we're having a free call in a week. So here's some information. Check out some of these episodes. You might find these relevant. Like
exactly.
It's
a nice way to introduce yourself to people. It's a nice way to connect with people because they see, not only do they see you in action, but they can see if you're doing it right, which I always hope I'm doing it right. You always hope you're doing it right. They see the passion, the interest, the engagement that you have in what you're talking about and the people that you worked with and the people you're talking to. And they say, boy, that guy, you know, I really want to work with that guy. You know, and that's when the call comes in, or that's when the email comes in, or that's when they DM you on X or Blue Sky or Threads or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it's about. And it takes time sometimes too. Like that's the beauty of this is you're doing it as an ongoing thing, and this is your ongoing marketing. This is your way to stay top of mind. You're doing that for months and years. And sometimes somebody that you just met, it's going to take them 3 years to come around to you.
Exactly.
So it gives you that patience and sets you up for that long-term opportunity. But you keep doing it not because you're getting sales right away, because a lot of times you don't. But you know that over time, the cumulative value of this is going to be undeniable, and you are building in like very intentional wins. So you're getting extended conversations with people that are valuable for you, whether as strategic partners or potential clients or previous clients.
Sure.
Or, you know what I mean? Like it's those are the kinds of things that are beautiful about all of it, because it does, by a fact of existing, just by doing the show, your business is better off. And that's really the goal.
And I think that that's a very important point, that it takes patience. It takes time to build that awareness. And it's part of any marketing campaign now. You know, when I talk to clients who want to get more media exposure for them or for their business or for their brand, one of the things I say now is we control the story. We don't have to rely on local TV stations and local radio stations and local newspapers. Why? Because they're overburdened, they're under circulated, and they need all the help they can get. So what are we doing? We're creating our own stories. We're creating our own messaging. We're creating our own platforms, and we're distributing it ourselves to people who we think will be interested in what we're doing. And if that results in, hey, you know, I saw your podcast, would you come on our TV show? Or would you be on the 6 o'clock news? Or would you be on my talk radio show? That's great. But that's not the primary focus of it. That's the primary purpose of it is to get your word out. And this is the way you control the word that you're getting out.
Yep. And it's a great way to reflect on that word, too. Is it resonating or is it not?
Right.
Right? Same thing for being a guest. Are you getting booked on shows or are you not? For example, I had people tell me that they had enough people that were talking about podcasting for businesses, for example. So occasionally I got denied.
Right.
Good pitch. They had somebody else in the space. That makes sense. There's other businesses like mine that are out there, right? But that's where I make a pivot and I go, okay, well, I have gotten on some shows and not gotten on some others. What can make me truly unique and get me on more shows? I'll talk more about hosting skills. And I get to sell everything that I do as a podcast producer and a business owner, right? But I'm using this lane of hosting as my in.
Right.
And that makes me unique. So I'm always refining, always evaluating, seeing what that says about me, about the business, how I can tighten up the message. And I do that on both sides as a guest and a host.
And one of the things that I've always been interested in my in the last 26, 27 years of my career have been the idea of preaching to people who don't know the value of something. I mean, I look back on when I was working at US Interactive back in early 1997 and throughout 97 and into 1998, convincing businesses why they needed to have a website, why they needed to have e-commerce, why they needed to plan for what the internet has since become. And in 1997, that was a tough sell. You know, you're an evangelist for the internet in 1997, and people are looking at you like you're out of your mind. You know, that's just chat rooms and email.
Yeah.
No, it's more than that. You know, and that continued to evolve. Same thing happened with streaming video in 2007, 2008, when I was talking to people about streaming video. YouTube wasn't really had the penetration it does today. But I was telling people about how they needed to do some more things on video online. And, you know, it's the curse of being an early adopter, but I came into the podcast space a little later than most. But because I wanted to see how it shook out and where it was going. And I really think when I talk to my clients today, I really think that this should be one of the key elements of any marketing, any publicity, any PR, any advertising campaign is a podcast. Because you get to control your message. It's storytelling with a purpose, as we like to say. But the purpose is to get your story out there, to introduce yourself to a whole new audience, a whole new potential client base.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. I mean, it can be the absolute engine to drive a business's marketing, and it can be very efficient and cost effective. I mean, it's a beautiful tool, and that's why we've been fully committed to it with the studio. I mean, it's not one of those things where it's trendy,
right?
You know what I mean? People look at it that way, but I think it's incredibly practical, and it doesn't matter what era it's in going forward. Right. You know what I mean? Like, this is a tool that covers a lot of platforms. You control it. You have a lot of flexibility with it. It accomplishes things that are both like based on numbers and not based on numbers. And to be able to have so much flexibility and ways to go about it, it's just the greatest. I mean, honestly, I love working in podcasting and being able to find those right ways to apply it to people. It's awesome.
That's really cool. And I've always admired you for doing this, because I think as one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, but that's one of the reasons why I've wanted to work with you. And we have worked together for a couple of years now, is that you get it. You see it, and you're always constantly exploring and seeing new ways to do something, which is something that I always try to do in PR, is find a new way to tell the story. A new method that I can tell a story for my clients that will be successful, that will get them business. And I think the part that I'm really excited about right now is the media training portion of that, because people really need to be comfortable to do this effectively. And if you're not practicing, if you're not learning, if you're not having lessons, and you're not participating in that process beforehand, you're not going to succeed in that space. You're not going to succeed as a guest or as a host, because you're kind of winging it. And if you winged it and everything you did in your career how successful would you have been?
Yeah.
So do some prep. Do the media training. Do the production training. Do the things that you need to do so that you can be the best at it, and you can use that as a part of your business model.
Amen, Jim. Amen.
All right. So we're gonna end here, but I'm gonna end here with two things. One thing a potential guest should do right now to prepare, and one thing a potential host should do to prepare.
Yeah. So to some degree, it's like you were saying with the demo, like practice interviews, right? Just go to ChatGPT or the recording app on your phone, just anything, and just spitball with yourself. What are some things I could talk about? What makes me interesting? What do I care most about? And how do I present this story? So as a guest, that's number one. Is just get it out there.
Yeah.
Just get started in the process of exploring it. That's number one. From a hosting side, it's really, what do you want out of it, right? What is the goal? And I think you need to be very explicit about what that goal is and honest with yourself about what that goal is. Because if it's, I do want all the downloads and I want to be big and famous and I want to get on the stages and I want to be nationally recognized and you know what I mean? Then like, okay. But that is a specific lane and a specific strategy.
Right.
Everything you're going to do is be aligned around that. And frankly, it's going to be a lot more expensive. Right? Because you got to compete, you got to market, like there's a whole lot more to it. If it's, hey, I'm trying to generate more business, well, great. But now at least you can decide, okay, how am I designing this show? What kinds of people do I want to bring on? What are the topics that I want to talk about? Like everything's decided from just actually what you want out of it and writing it down. So, I would say those are the two paths to take, whether it's a guest or a host.
Okay. I like it. And I totally agree. And the preparation, the education, the searching out examples and creating that pilot. I love the idea of doing something on ChatGPT or your recorder on your cell phone or on your laptop, where you can just practice hearing the sound, even practice your storytelling and the sound of your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could go into a whole nother level of the style of voice inflection and how to talk.
100%.
That'll be a topic for another day. Well, Vince, I really want to thank you for joining me here today and having this conversation. How can people reach out to you if they have questions?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in touch is freepodcasthelp.com.
Okay.
So all one word, nice and simple, freepodcasthelp.com. And with that, you get a 30-minute strategy session. And this isn't just like a basic get to know you. I will know about you before you sit down. So it will be very in-depth. I will talk about real problems that you have and real solutions to those things. So freepodcasthelp.com.
freepodcasthelp.com is the best way to reach Vince, SBX Productions, here in Philadelphia. And if you want to reach out to me, have any questions, or I can be of any assistance, or you have questions about media training, I would love to talk to you. I'd love to hear your story. I can be reached by cell phone, 215-266-5943. Email is jim@jhdenterprises.com. Website is jhdenterprises.com. I'm on Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I haven't done TikTok yet, and I'm working on Reddit. But that's where you can find me, and I look forward to seeing you all again here soon for another episode of Storytelling with a Purpose. Thanks for joining.